I let go because I knew it would come out today about your twin sister.
Hmm.
And the words were, my twin sister took her life because of my mother.
Hmm. Hmm.
Sisters, hey, little girl, are you looking for hope in the world that has lied to you about who you really are? Wrong woman, holding in story she needs to tell.
Welcome back to Staci Speaks Hope. We have part two with Pamela Byrd. She has shared her childhood journey, her little girl journey. And now I'm asking her to share what she's done today. She is a boundaries coach and a journaling practitioner. Her podcast is Let's Talk Boundaries, and she's a published author. Her two books are I Had a Twin, Disrupting the Cycle of Childhood Trauma, and her most recent book called Triangulation, How to Break Free from Toxic Relationships. She uses her relationship with the Lord, her Christian faith, to help women set healthy boundaries in areas that truly matter. She's been doing this for over 20 years and has experience in both the corporate world and in Pamela. We are so glad to have you back again today. Thank you so much for all that you've shared, and I can't wait to hear what comes next.
Well, I'm glad I was invited back. This is going to be amazing. I love it. Thank you for having me.
You are so welcome. You dropped a bomb in the last episode that I let go because I knew it would come out today about your twin sister.
Hmm.
And the words were, my twin sister took her life because of my mother.
Hmm. Hmm.
Tell me more about that and how that connects to what you're doing today and how that helped you heal.
Good question. Yeah, good question. My sister and I spent a lot of time talking on the phone because she lived up north and I'm down in the south. And we talked a lot about the struggles that she was going through as a result of her own childhood traumas. And there was a period of time where where I went to visit her a couple times because her husband contracted cancer and he had the fourth stage of cancer. And so I went to help her. One thing you have to realize about my sister at that time, this was within the year that she took her life, was that at our age, we were 62 or 61 years old. I don't remember exactly, but this was I would come and help her to with her husband. Oh, what I was going to say is the one thing that's important to my sister and I were the same age. Psychologically or mentally, her therapist had her at an 8-year old as a child
Mm.
because he wanted, and I found this out from the recording therapy sessions that I had, and also from her journals, and also by her behavior, that the therapist had her at 8 years old so he could help her to heal from the pain, from the love that she did not receive from our parents at such age. And so that was the age where they were. They had progressed up to 8 years old. And so a lot of her behavior was that. I'll give you an example. When I went to visit, I'd stay for a couple weeks and she would be in bed when she wasn't doing anything, just rocking in a fetal position. She'd just rock. She'd wanted me to come to, and because they had a king size bed, her husband was out in the family room in his chair recliner because that was the only place he could sit that it wasn't painful for him. And so I would come and lay in bed with her and watch TV. And I remember one day she said she was going to get a that sleep number bed. And this was after I left. I was talking to her on the phone. She said, "I want to get the sleep number and I want you to come and watch TV with me." And that was kind of like an idea of where she was at 8 years old in her mind. So she just, and whenever my mom would call, it would just be she would always pick up the phone for my mother. But after she got off the phone, she would always rock and just, and whenever I talked about her, the look on her face, it was stoic. But I knew she was in a lot of pain every time we talked about her. And another thing is, whenever I would talk to her about what needed to be done for her husband because of being in stage 4, she just didn't want to do it. She's like, and it's understandable because at 8 years old, you don't know what to do in a situation like cancer. You don't know what to do when you're talking to the person that created all this trauma for you, and you have to be nice. You have to help them. She didn't have to. I chose not to. It was at that time that my mother would call there and she knew I was there. And my twin sister would say to me, Mother says to tell you hi. Mother says to tell you hi. And I wouldn't say anything back because I don't, at that time, I wasn't speaking to her. I had detached from her for different reasons. And she just, my sister has stated to me, not to me, she stated in her journals how she felt about that. But all the experiences that she had, it was, oh, and here's the most important thing. When when her husband had gotten to be at the place where he was in not hospice care, but just in the hospital, she didn't want him to come back because she took care of him. And I was there, we were there with her at the time because we drove there to make sure we were there when he was getting really sick and put into the hospital. And she said she didn't want him to come back. So I talked to the therapist, advocate, not therapist, but an advocate for the hospital for him. Can you, she said that unless he, there has to be something that he can't do. And I said, well, he can't walk. She goes, okay, let me give it 2 weeks and I'll get back to you on where we are. So I gave her a reprieve for 2 weeks. And then we talked about what would happen, after he passed and things like that. And she said, I'm not going to live with her. I'm not going to live with her. And at the time she was addicted to the medication that they had given her husband. She was addicted to Oxycontin. That's what they were giving him. He didn't like it. She did. And at the time, the last time I went there, I knew that there was no way she was going to get any more of that medication because if he's going medication, and I said, you know what? I have an option for you. And she said, what's that? And I said, you can go to rehab. Oh, she lost it. She lost because remember she's attempted suicide several times before, so she's been in that type of environment, and she lost it, ran into her bedroom crying, just bawling, and 15 minutes later she came out with a stoic look on her face and she didn't talk about it anymore. And that's when we left, and that's when we found out 2 days later that they found her body. So obviously, in my mind, she knew that she couldn't get any more Oxycontin. She wasn't going to go to rehab because she knew that experience. And she knew her husband wasn't going to be there. And she knew she didn't want to go stay with her mom, our mom. I told her I was going to help her, but she did not want to live in the man less than what she was already living. And so these are some, and at 8 years old, remember, at 8 years old, this is the decision that she made based on where the therapist had her at that given time.
Wow. And just have to breathe that in. That was a big,
it's a lot.
It's a lot. And I want to clarify for myself and our listeners, when you say the therapist had her, did she at 8 years old? Was that going back? Was that where she was mentally? Or was
yes.
that okay? So it wasn't like regression therapy where you go back and remember being 8 years old and see yourself in that age and stage. That was her mind kind of locked in at that age.
It was locked in because he was, I don't know if I agree with this, but he was playing the role of the dad that was never there. And so a lot of the journal entries are scripts between she and the doctor on different situations she had when she was that age and how to handle it differently with a loving father.
Mm.
Because she would ask him questions all the time. Well, what would you do if your daughter did this? How would you handle it if your daughter did this? And he would say, I love you. And no matter what you do, I'll teach you. I want to protect you. So he was speaking that nurturing language that we never received
Mm.
growing up. And it was interesting because there was one point she wanted me to do something that her therapist asked her to ask me to do. Um, and I did it. And she said, "Oh, can we please call him? Can we please call him and tell him?" And it'll just be a voicemail, but I want him to hear that we did it. And I was like, "Sure, I'll do it." So that's just one of the examples of, that age where she was mentally and emotionally. It was a lot to take care of him, a lot. And he wasn't necessary, her husband, he was not necessarily nice to her. She basically found someone that was a father figure for her that ended up treating her the same way that our mother did.
And that is something that does happen. I've heard that we're most attracted to the
Yeah.
person that reminds us of the parent who's most emotionally
Yeah.
unavailable to us.
Yes.
We're trying to
Yes.
claim that.
Yes, and it never worked. And that's why she really latched onto her therapist after going through probably five or six of them. She finally found one that nurtured her enough and helped her to feel loved.
But
And
that
and
strange power that he seemed to have over her, based on what you're
yeah,
saying. So this is
yeah,
a question about boundaries comes in, right? Well, I know you have two books, but that really raises a boundaries issue, right? And not being able
yeah,
to even establish them or identify a need for them.
yeah. And I talked to her a plethora of times about boundaries, just even the boundaries when I was there that she wasn't creating, she wasn't, giving to him, her husband, and anyone else. And but she was not there mentally the way that a person processes information as an adult. And as I said previously, she would not connect with her inner child. And one of the things about her connecting with her inner child was she couldn't do it because it would be competition for where she was at that given time.
Yeah, yeah. I guess you have to be an adult to connect with your inner
Yes.
child.
Yes, and she was not. She was
Mm.
not. So I completely understand, the choice that she made.
So, as a boundaries coach, if this was not your twin sister and this was not your real life, or even some of the things that you actually said to her, share with our audience as they're going through their healing journey. They may not be stuck at that age, but if I go back to 7, what would you tell me about boundaries or disrupting the cycle of that trauma?
I would tell you to remember that that is another person other than you at that given time, because that way you don't uh, what's the word I'm looking for? You don't get so involved in what your little girl is doing that you don't remember who you are. And I think that's one of the things you and I talked about last week, and I kept reverting over to be an adult, was because I have protected that little girl so much that I know when she's starting to hurt. I know when to protect her. But when you are so saturated in who she is and you don't remember who you are because you're separate at that point, whenever you're going through this healing process, you both have to be separate
Mm.
and you have to be the parent or the adult and she is the child, but you have to remember that. Last week I got to a point where I felt like I was her, and then I had to come in as an adult and make her feel safe
I
about
heard you.
sharing things.
I heard you make that reset when you were speaking,
Mm-hmm.
and it. Thank you for explaining it. And if you didn't
Yes,
see last week, get this watcher, this audience, you got to go back so
you
that
got
you
to go back.
understand what we're talking about, because the things that Pamela shared give this greater context.
Yes, yes, it does. You have to go back and watch that because you got to see the little Pamela. You got to see her, not Pam, but Pamela.
Yes, that's beautiful and such a relevant tool. Identify who you are now, to have that separation between who you are now and your little girl. Even in the healing journey, even as you begin to heal, you still have to know that you did grow up. And even
Mm-hmm.
in instances, that little girl's reactions, mentality, emotions rise up to cause you to
Oh,
make decisions that affect your adult life, like Pamela's twin.
right. And, you know, a point I wanted to make is that you may be going through that self care, through that me time, that quality time that you're doing the healing. You're not going to be doing that all day. You're going to be doing a certain period of time. Now, it's going to be very reflective throughout the day, but you have to remember who you are and don't get to the level where you're that little girl all day because it can drain you. It can drain you. Got to know that's a boundary you got to set for yourself, is to be able to separate it so that you can go back to it, but you got to separate away from it so you can go back to it
Mm.
emotionally and mentally. Because it's you know, that's why, you know, I was thinking, Staci, a lot of people don't do the work because of the fear of the pain of going back. But it's not until you go back and you deal with that that you can even heal to be that healthy adult that you need to be.
And what I hear in that, just to expand, they're afraid to go back because they don't know they'll come back. They think they'll get stuck. If they start,
Yeah.
they think they'll never stop.
Right. Right. And,
Or
you know, trigger.
they don't think they can pull her back together. I mean, that's why the image of the woman all together and the little girl crying back in the mirror is so tangible to me. Because when I saw that, it just shows that that outside, the woman outside is still who's walking around. And
Yeah.
to be able to have that composure and still be in touch with that little girl's crying and she needs some attention. You're giving us permission to have the boundary of I'm the grown
Yes.
now. I'm going to
Yes.
take care of my little girl, but not
Yes.
become and be consumed by her emotions, by her pain.
Right. Right. And, you know, another thing is there are enough triggers out there that cause us to go back there. But the more you work with her in the healing, in order for you to heal, the less triggers you'll experience, because those triggers will then become educational. They'll help you to know, oh, okay. I remember I used to respond that way or react that way when someone would say something. And I don't do it anymore. It's because of the work that you're doing. So look forward to the after effect of the work, because it is an amazing place to be as an adult, to know that you have healed and that little girl inside of you is happy that you're there in her life.
Whew, I had to write that one down. Looking
Yeah.
forward to the after effect of the healing. God is
Yes.
saying, I have this amazing gift for you, and I'm going to be right with you to walk through it. That's something to look forward to with great expectations. It is that exceedingly abundantly above all we can ask or think. That is a way that that scripture may have never been applied. But in this scenario, as the healing journey is occurring for your little girl, if you're listening and you haven't started yet and you've been afraid to start because of what Pamela just identified, know that you are still going to be you and there's that going to be that separation. Thank you so much for illuminating that and putting words around it.
Uh-oh.
Critical advice, Pamela. Thank you.
Well, and I have one more. I have a mint.
Wasn't
I
cutting you
have
off.
no, that's okay. I have one more I just thought about. This is something that I carry with me, that a mentor, she passed away, but she used to say, the atmosphere of expectancy is the breeding ground for miracles. So when we go into the healing, on that healing journey intentionally, we do it with a sense of optimism, of expectancy of where you're going to be throughout this journey and where you can go and who you can become as a result of the work that you have agreed to do. It's an amazing thing to expect, because that's where the miracles come from. That's where they come from.
I love that. And the journey or the desire to move to where we can become, is we want to be in alignment with what God created us to be.
Yes.
And in our
Yes.
brokenness, we lose hope. We lose
Mhm.
the ability to dream and to
Yeah.
see things in that alternate way, that different way, because again, that lie became our truth. So everything is distorted. It's like
Mhm.
backwards. Everything's backwards.
It is.
That's so,
It is.
so, so beautiful to just have hope, to dream, to have expectation. An atmosphere of expectancy for miracles is the breeding ground for miracles. Did I say that right?
Yes. There you go.
We can't forget that miracles are still happening every day. And again, in
Every
so many
day.
forms.
Every day. And if you don't believe it, they won't happen for you. You got to believe it. You got to believe it.
Right. And again, it just scripture is woven through all of this because the Bible talks about when we don't have faith. The faith is the size of a mustard seed. And that
Mhm.
faith, anything is possible with God.
If you believe, if
Yeah,
you believe.
yeah, I love it. Believe is having faith.
Yeah, yeah. It's beautiful, beautiful thing. Hope, faith. It's beautiful. I don't care if it is the size of that mustard seed. You got it. Now let it grow, water it, nurture it. And then take out the weeds as they come, because weeds will come faster than the growth, than the flowers, whatever it is. And you got to pluck those out. And so what are those weeds? Those weeds are those self-defeating thoughts, self-sabotaging thoughts that the enemy plants in your head. Like, okay, no, you can't do that. Who do you think you are? I'm a child of the Most High God. And I know that I have been created for a purpose such as this. And in order to do that, I have to clear out the weeds that you've been placing there. So I pluck them out to have a clear, beautiful garden of who God created me to be, to do what I need to do on this earth.
Girl, you better preach.
I'm serious. See, the thing about it, and it's in my second book, I really help people to understand how the enemy knows exactly what God placed you here to do. And if he can do anything, he's going to stop you from doing that. He's going to do it very manipulatively, and he's going to do it through, most importantly, your emotions with as it relates to relationships. And if you don't identify what that is, so you can recognize that toxic behavior that's coming into your life, that's feeding on your weaknesses, that on your vulnerabilities, on your humility, he's feeding off of that. That's why it's so important to do that work so that you can identify what he's doing. Like, we don't go into battle. I know this is a crazy time to talk about war, but our soldiers don't go into battle without knowing who their enemy is, how the enemy sleeps, how he thinks, how he moves. We got to know that. In my book, I help you to this is the second book, I help you to understand how he sleeps, how he moves, how he acts upon you. And then the journaling helps you to keep remembering, keep recognizing through the patterns of what the enemy is doing to prevent you from fulfilling that purpose, because it's all out war. And a lot of people don't like to talk about that, but it's not until you talk about that you finish being you decide not to be the victim and you be the victor, and understanding that you wear the army the weapons of warfare. You wear those, the sword, the shield, the plate, everything, the boots, everything. You put those on every single morning. You put those on because you have the Holy Spirit that's guarding you against the enemy and his attacks, manipulative and how small they may be, but he helps you so you don't, your armor helps you through the love of the Holy Spirit to prevent those things, those weapons that are trying to form against you. They're formed, but they're not going to hurt you
Right.
because you know what you need to do, especially in that healing process. And when you get through that healing process, you'll be able to help that little girl to, because she's standing behind you, just like we stand behind God in every battle.
Yes.
That little girl is standing behind us, expecting us to protect her and to save her. And if we don't get to know who she is and love on her and heal her, then we're not in the position to do that for her.
Ooh, yes. And I just heard you talked about the full armor of God. And the scripture that keeps coming to my mind is because the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but
Not
mighty
carnal.
God for pulling down the strongholds
Yes, the mind and the mind.
in our
Right,
mind and hearts.
right. And
And
and so I told you about that journaling style last week.
yeah, let's
That's
talk more
where,
about that today. For those that
yeah,
go into
the mind, right, has to communicate with the heart, because the heart is the vulnerable piece that the enemy tries to get through. But when you can use that mind, that strong, change that stronghold to be one that God has placed within you, and then you will then know how to handle the emotions that the enemy is trying to attack.
whew,
Mm.
I know. Drop the mic.
Drop it.
So if you were giving somebody beginner journaling steps through this process,
Mm-hmm.
let's outline the first bits of it, at least, however
Okay.
much you want to go into.
Okay. The first thing you want to do is you want to get it from from out of your head, out of your heart, out of your soul down on paper. There's something about the getting the transfer through the hand down on paper. Now you can type, you can record whatever you want to do, but there's something about that hand getting it down where it's interesting because you write things in, it's called the first style, the basic style is called cathartic. So you're just spewing, you're just getting it out. That's when you're an emotional high, whether it be a good high or a bad high. Either way, it's a high. And so it's a good time to journal. And please, when you have good highs, journal them as well, because you want to keep track of those through the second form of journaling, which is reflective. Because reflective style of journaling helps you to go back and look at what you just written and then ask yourselves the question, what did I hear there? What
Mm,
surprised me? What am I going to do with this information? Right? Those three questions are key in any cathartic journaling to go on to the reflective, so that you can really have a sense of what it is that you are experiencing. Because at the time when you're writing, you're either happy or sad. But if you don't ask those questions at the end for reflective, you could go back and experience the same thing and come back writing it all over again. And that's something we don't want to do. The do loop. Yeah.
yeah.
You don't
It's
want to do that.
like, ooh, I'm taking notes, so that's why I'm looking down.
Oh, and
Because
that's not the end. So,
and the other thing, as a teacher, when we write, we transfer our thoughts from short-term to long-term memory. So
see, yeah.
intentionally, we could be replacing some of those traumatic long-term memories,
Yeah.
at least
Yeah.
disrupting them. Now, wait a minute,
Yes.
I got to think
Yes.
this differently. I'm gonna change the narrative.
Gotta do it. Gotta be intentional about it. And that's what the journaling, the reflective helps you to do. Be intentional about that, what you've experienced through the cathartic, so that so you can create a plan on what to do and how, and when it comes up again. Because we don't want to keep repeating mistakes. We don't want to keep repeating or building upon pain that we're not learning what to do about it.
And that's so important as we talk about healing, that there is a process that we enter it with intentionality, and in our alignment with how we're saying, God, I'm giving this to you, help me work through it. But that
Yeah.
on the other side of healing, on the other side, there is that healing. On the other side of the work, there is that healing. The book I'm writing is on the other side, there is hope.
There is. And the other thing that's really good about this is when you need help, when you need to go to a therapist or a coach, you having this information, those questions answered, helps them to help you.
Yeah.
I was talking to a client yesterday and she hadn't done that work. She was so overwhelmed, feeling just exhausted and ready to give up. And this was a 15-minute session, Staci. This was a 15-minute session. By the end of that 15 minutes, I got her to consider some things. And she said, I never thought about that. Yeah. So these things, when you do the reflection, it helps you to see, wow, I hadn't thought about that. And you wrote it. Now, let's take it to the person that's guiding you through this healing process. Give that to them, and you will help them so much to help you to get to the next level and resolve.
That's amazing. I love that. Help me help you.
Yes, yes.
And it's
That's what we
important to
want.
make the distinction between what therapists do and what life coaches do, what coaches do.
Yeah,
Help you see what's already in you, and they help
yes,
heal those mental, those areas that those things that have happened to you affect your mental health.
yes, yes. And remove the blockage because we get stumped, and when we only talk to ourselves, not journaling, but we only talk in our heads. I call that monkey brain because it's just like a spider monkey. It's just all over the place. And what do you do with it? You get so overwhelmed, you just want to give up. Journaling helps you to get it out. Many times I'm going through something, I said, ooh, I gotta go journal. I have to go journal. I just have to go journal because I know that's the only thing that's going to give me sanity. And in the dialogical journaling that I spoke to you about, that's when the Holy Spirit is talking to me. And that gives me a sense of calm, of peace, and of resolve. I get up and I'm feeling good, and I've got answers that I need, especially when it comes to setting healthy boundaries. You think you set boundaries and you think they're healthy, test it against your journaling. Because once your head and your heart become in concert with one another, the answers that you receive on how to handle a situation come out much better from here, making your heart connect and feel valued, and you can come to an agreement together on what your next steps will be.
For those that didn't hear last episode, would tell a little bit more about the dialogical process.
Okay, sure. Dialogical journaling is the next one I was going to share. It's more advanced style of journaling after the basic cathartic and reflective. Dialogical is a script that you can do, and you can do it with anyone, and you're writing it. When I say anyone, you can put anyone on paper that you're having a conversation with. So if you think about a movie script, right? A movie script, you have someone's line here, someone's line there. So you are one of the characters, so to speak, in the script, and the other character is who you place there to work out a situation or a challenge that you're having and come to some answers on how to set boundaries in that area. And oftentimes, I will use the person that I'm talking to as the Holy Spirit. Many people in, I say the secular world, they would say that you're talking your head to your heart. One part is your head, one part is your heart. Also, you can do it as your inner adult and your inner child. That's the one that's amazing because whatever situation emotionally that you're coming with, that adult is going to have that conversation with you so that the head and the heart can work as one and get to the point where you can have resolve. And then you know what to do as far as creating a boundary, a healthy one. Doing it based on emotion is usually not healthy. It's not until you get that head and that heart involved, the inner adult and the inner child, the Holy Spirit, and you, the little girl, the adult. Oh my God. It's amazing when they two talk. And it's interesting. Every time I end a conversation in writing, I always say, you know what? I just love you for what you're doing. That's the little girl. And the adult said, well, of course, that's what I'm here for.
Oh,
Yeah,
the beauty, right? Because in our healed adult selves, we are taking care of our little girl.
we are.
We are able to reach out to other women who need to go on this journey because it's like, girl, I've been there.
Ooh,
I know where you are. I know what it's like to be stuck. I know what it's like to have that pain. I know what it's like to have that little girl running your adult life.
yes.
So
Yes.
recap our three styles of journaling. There's
Yes.
the emotional release, both the good and the bad. That was important to me to hear.
Yeah.
Reflective. Now we're reviewing what we wrote in the cathartic and asking three key questions.
Mm-hmm.
What did I hear? What surprised me? And what am I going to do with it?
Yes.
Must be actionable. It's the blueprint
Yes. Intentional.
to create a plan toward healing. And then the dialogical is making the connection in a script form between the head and the heart, the little girl and the adult, or a person outside of you. But with the Holy Spirit leading, I've done that journaling without knowing that's what it was called, and
Yeah.
answers to how to run a whole school,
Yes.
to do things in ministry. And I was like, wow.
Yes.
So I am a proponent, and I'm excited to know what God showed me was a real, as a tangible thing and a name in the world. But I knew it was real because I had the result like you. I got up and I felt completely different, and the weight,
Yes. Yes.
the story, and the monkey brain and the was
Yeah.
was calm and quiet.
Yes.
My brain.
Yes. It was
So I'm
subdued.
so glad you made that sound.
Subdued. Yeah.
I'm glad you made that sound because my brain does the same noise.
That's what it is. We don't realize it's just a bunch of sounds coming in, and we just want to stop, go to sleep, do something. But the most important thing, it distracts you. It disrupts you from doing what it is that God placed you here to do. And that's the ultimate goal of the enemy, to stop you from doing what God placed you on this earth to do, however, whatever means possible. And this helps you to combat that.
To steal, kill, and destroy.
Yeah, that's it.
Our dreams, our will, our emotions, our hope, our imagination, our creativity, you name it.
Yeah, and you know what? If you don't allow that little girl to be who she needs to be, all those dreams and that creativity that you had, you still have them, but you just locked them away. And how do you think she feels about that? She can't carry it out. You have to carry it out. But if you don't have that conversation with her, it's never going to happen. But those are things, dreams that God placed in her.
Yes.
So what do you say when you don't honor those dreams that God put in you as that little girl? And you just go, maybe I'm going to get a job that pays me this simply because I just need to pay the bills. Don't just do that. That is not what God placed you here to do. Make the time that you need to find out, God, what did you place me here to do? And I need to be about your business. I need to be doing all that. And then that purpose needs to be primary, and that making money, that job needs to be secondary.
Well, and the provision doesn't always come the way we've conditioned our minds that it's going to come. It may not
No,
look like that. Maybe because jobs go, jobs come and jobs go. In
jobs
the
do.
industry, people had jobs, solid jobs they thought they were going to retire from, even in this day and age. And now they don't have a job.
Don't count on it.
Putting your weight in that is also saying, hey, God, I don't actually trust you for that. Have
Mm,
that honest conversation. If I have to be my own provider, then I have to be reminded, oh, wait, what is God going to do if I have to do everything? God does not need my help.
not at all.
So that empowerment, my hope is healing our inner wounds, opening our heart to dream and to love, pursuing our passion and our purpose, and E is being empowered to become. So our messaging is in such alignment. I love that
Yeah,
because
yeah.
because this final stage of everything you've talked about leads to a place of empowerment,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
reclaiming our dreams through a healed place, through setting healthy boundaries. And I think that's the part about being little girls is so vulnerable, right?
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have any boundaries. We didn't, we didn't, I don't think we even knew we were supposed to. We weren't allowed to for sure because we were children.
Mm-hmm.
And so the
Mm-hmm.
idea of boundaries is a grown-up thought. And kids are learning it today, but they're still immature minds. So you got
Yeah,
the right level of maturity to even set a boundary. And
you
I
do.
that you've brought that forward.
Well, and another thing is, the mistake we make is thinking that the boundaries that we need to set need to be set the same way our parents set them.
Mm,
And that's a mistake, because we're setting them from a whole new set of filters. And filters are those beliefs that we have from our childhood that are skewed.
yeah.
Just because we grew up in a certain, so let me give you an example. I grew up where um and I think we talked about this. Well, I don't, maybe not. I got whoopings when I was punished. Yeah. And I don't believe in that now, but I did it to my kids because that's what I learned to do. And, so many other things I did that were what she said I should do. What you witness.
Yes.
is the experience
Yes.
and the history. And if you don't learn anything else, then you're going to continue that cycle. And I had to my I have an ex-husband that would, whenever my son was I think 12 years old at the time, whenever he did something bad, my husband would at the time would go and paddle him with a wood paddle. Well, one day my son decided to go to school, go straight to the nurse's office, and they took pictures of the paddle marks on his behind. And the next thing I know, I had a service worker come to me with my son in the room to talk to me because I'd been reported. And she said to me, which is the most humiliating thing I've ever felt. She said, "You will not lay a hand on your son. If you do, you will pay for it. You will go to jail for that." That was so painful for me. So what happened was I was mandated to do parenting classes. Now, keep in mind, I was in my early 40s at the time. That 6 week course that I went to after work taught me so much about parenting. And I realized, wow, I had no idea this was the way you're supposed to parent, because all I saw was the way that my mother did it, my grandmother did it, everyone in the neighborhood. And I was like, ooh, I can't do that. So, you know what I did? I apologized to my kids for the way that I had raised them. And it took a while before I unlearned those things. But I knew that at that time, that was the best thing that could ever happen to me, to learn how to parent the right way,
Wow.
and not the way that I learned growing up. So those boundaries you learn, question them, and go find the real answers for what you're supposed to do, not what you feel. Definitely not what you feel, because what you feel is based on your past, and you don't want to do that. So yeah, it's a hard lesson that I had to learn, and I probably learned it too late, but um, I got to keep going. And that's why I want to help other people that have children to, really understand that that's not necessarily the way to do it. And the result you're going to get as an adult, that child becomes an adult, you may not, ever hear from that child again.
The word that came to my mind when you were saying this is it's about a relationship.
Yeah.
And if you're relating to them through violence, which is also historically what we were taught as Africans in America during
Yeah.
enslavement, that was the way to manage things.
And who
It,
do we learn that from?
our, well, not
The
our
slave owners.
slave owners, yeah, absolutely,
The
yeah,
slave owners. That's the way we're supposed to do it. The
right,
people we took from the people we despised. That's because it was learned behavior,
right.
but we did it. So that's why we got to check it. Go back and look and see what's the right thing to do.
In the South, go get a switch. That was like you're gonna go get the element of punishment that's a whip.
Yeah, that
Leave
hurts the most.
mark and hurts the most.
Yeah,
That's where the distortion of things comes in. And
yeah,
it's boundaries are, again, there were no boundaries. You had no rights. Your feelings didn't matter. There was no conversation to say, have an explanation about things. Again, what we do as parents, what we learn to do as parents, what was passed down through the generations of those that had been enslaved was violence. It
yeah.
to get desired outcomes.
And the misinterpretation of the Bible on spare the rod, spoil the child. Because if you go and you look at the Bible, you will understand that the rod is instruction.
Correct.
It's not physical, it's instruction. And spare the child. You got to guide him the right way, teach him up in the way that he should go, and catch him in every situation and set a boundary. Teach them a boundary on what's acceptable and what isn't. That it goes so much further.
And children long for boundaries. Having been in education for 15 years, working with students who didn't have boundaries at home,
Ooh,
they
you knew it.
loved to have a space where because a boundary is You can do this. This is acceptable. This is good. This is what you do that is going to help you. And on the other side is these are the things that you do that are problematic. They're going to cause problems for you. I mean, I would go so far as a principal to tell some of these young Black boys is like the difference between not listening is you have two choices. You're going to be dead or you're going to be in jail.
Mm,
In California, where killing Black boys for sport on the street was no different than any other big city, but knowing,
wow.
city that was predominantly Black and had a lot of violence, especially in the times where a lot of drugs and all that was going on. And Pamela's expertise is in the area of setting the boundaries, but it interweaves with finding that little girl, remembering her, hearing her so that she can talk to you and have that dialogue when you get into your journaling and
Mhm.
confronting the lies, naming what those things are. That will come
Yeah,
out in that conversation with your little
it
girl.
will.
In my
Oh,
lies healing workbook and journal, it's like, what did she like? What made her happy? And also what hurt her? And so the intentionality of investigating and being curious about her is that communication that is a relationship. You're reestablishing or establishing for the first time a relationship with that little girl because of the hurt and helping her grow up and to step into what God has called her to be by way of setting boundaries to know because your perception of boundaries was so distorted
mhm.
by the traumas of childhood in various forms, whether it's external or in your home or outside of your home.
Yeah,
The traumas that we experience violates the boundary of our personhood, our identity.
absolutely.
You don't
All right.
matter. The boundary of you don't
Exactly.
matter. I can do whatever I want to you, in whoever that's from, whether it's sexual assault, incest, rape, bullying. It still says you don't matter.
That's right.
We matter.
We matter. And, one thing I was thinking about when you were saying that was when you get to know that, start a conversation with that little girl, ask her who she is, what she's like, what are her dreams. And at this point, finally, someone sees her and someone knows, someone is showing that she matters. And that didn't happen when she was little. Now
Yes.
it's up to you
Whew,
to see her.
this is beautiful.
Mhm.
If you've been tuning in and you've heard something that has touched your little girl, maybe she has is waiting for you to talk to her. The thing in the comment, put I matter.
You
Just
matter.
to show that you're not alone and that other people are gaining from this message. Pamela, this has been so helpful, so insightful, so wonderful. What closing message would you leave with our listeners for today?
Get to know that little girl. Don't be afraid.
Mm.
Just start talking through journaling, start a dialogue, introduce yourself to her.
Ooh,
Let her know who you are, but not until you find out who she is. But sometimes you have to get to the point where you got to make her feel safe. Does she feel safe around you?
yeah.
That's the biggest thing because you won't get anything if she doesn't feel safe. You got, and you know what? If you can listen to the previous episode where we talked about that little girl sitting on a corner, do that. That's a great place to start because most likely, if you haven't had that relationship with her, she's lost. And how do you do that? Go back and watch that one and figure out how to start that conversation with her and then build a relationship. Just like you have to have time with the Lord. You have to because you're building relationship. Everybody knows who Jesus is, and everybody will tell you, "Oh yeah, I know Jesus. I have a relationship with Jesus." But do you? Just because you know the Bible doesn't mean you have a relationship with him. And it's the same thing with that little girl. You can't just do it once and expect her to grow up overnight. That would be magical, wouldn't it? Like Bewitched. I don't know if you guys are dating myself, but yeah, Bewitched or Genie, she
Yeah.
would do like that. I dream a genie and it would happen. No, that little girl is not going to grow up until you help her to grow. And like I said last week to Stacy, it took 14 years before my little girl and me became one. We were so in tune with one another. And that's why anytime I have a conversation with anyone and my emotions get involved, that adult is right there to put them in check. Right there. Say, oh, hold up. Let's go back and let's figure out what boundary needs to be set here, because there's no way I'm going to let somebody disrespect my boundaries, disrespect me, interrupt my peace, because that little girl is protected to do what she was placed on this earth to do. And I'm the one to make sure she carries it out.
I love that, because the boundary is internal
It is.
to what you know is true to be what you need to be,
Yeah.
to be to be who God called you to be, your highest and best. It's not
Highest.
feeling the emotions, but it's not letting the emotions get out of control.
Exactly. Because
And that's
that's what the
the
enemy wants.
distinction. Yes.
Yes. And there's two types of boundaries. And I'm glad you said that, because your internal boundary that you talked about, Stacy, is the decision that you make. The external boundary is how you communicate that decision. The action or words, that's the external.
That's good. And it lets people know you don't have to be like coming so hard and in your face and you bet not, and what you not gonna do is what I used to
That's
say.
emotional. That's emotional and that's unhealthy. People
Even
don't
for
realize.
yourself. You
Yeah.
let yourself go there, you're not really being all you're supposed to be.
It's weird. It's draining. It's so draining.
It takes a lot of energy to be like that on all the
It
time.
does. It does. And it doesn't get you anywhere. It
Yes.
doesn't get you anywhere. Don't react on emotion. Respond through thought and your emotions coming together, and to set the right boundaries through journaling.
And you have to be healed enough to do that. You have to work through the healing and unlearn that automatic response.
You do. You do. It's a journey. It's a great journey. You learn so much about yourself and how to respond to people. Don't react. Respond. But do the work. And I tell people, you don't have to set a boundary right away. No one is expecting you to. You don't have to. That's my boundary. I don't set it right away. I take time. I give that person communication on how long it'll be before I get back to them. Or I might have something that happened and I don't feel comfortable with it, but I'm not going to say anything right then. I need to go journal it to make sure that I'm considering both perspectives. That's the biggest thing about this. You get two different perspectives. And from that, then I can come back and say, hey, you said something the other day that I wanted to run past you. I wanted to talk to you about the way that I took it. The way that I took it may not have been the way that you meant it. So I just want to be clear on that. You said this, blah, blah, blah. And that gives that person an opportunity to say, oh, no, that's not what I meant. Or they'll say, why? You got a problem with it? Actually, I do. That's how you set up to set a boundary. And I know you said in closing, but I had to share that.
No,
I
that's
get so caught up in talking about boundaries.
okay. We'll continue on your podcast.
Yeah.
So again, Pamela's podcast is Let's Talk Boundaries, and Pamela's books that you can refer to for future references, Triangulation, and that's breaking free from toxic relationships. And I Had a Twin, disrupting the cycle of childhood trauma. Partnering those with the No More Lies healing workbook and journal that has spaces for writing will partner your healing, your journey, will help you align what God has called you to do and to be. If you want to get Pamela's books, Triangulation, How to Break Free from Toxic Relationships, and I Had a Twin, Disrupting the Cycle of Childhood Trauma. Partner those as you're on your healing journey. And if you haven't already gotten No More Lies healing workbook and journal that God deposited in me as a place to help you apply some of the steps of the journaling that Pamela has talked about. So happy to make available to you the No More Lies guided workbook and healing journal. Here's a quick peek inside that will help you get your own copy to see what we've been talking about and having a place to write your thoughts as you remember your little girl, identify the lies, find the truth, and then rehearse that truth so that you can walk into the purpose God has called you to. Go to stacyspeakshope.com
and order your copy today. Thank you, and God bless.
Get the bundle. And we are so grateful that you were here today. Thank you, Pamela. Thank you for the gems. There's a whole treasure chest.
I like that.
Audience, be blessed, and we'll see you next episode. Thank you for watching Staci Speaks Hope. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share.
Wrong woman, holding in story she needs to tell what God really wants you to do in this world. In His name, hope to break free from the shackles and the lies that have become your truth and put blinders on your eyes. You built walls around your heart. You have plugged up your ears. Get freedom to hope's what you need. It's in reach. Wipe your tears, little girl.